Death has a way of reminding us how fragile life really is, but sometimes the circumstances surrounding it are so bizarre, so avoidably foolish, that they leave us stunned in a completely different way. In this video, we're diving into 5 tragically stupid deaths of all time. Real stories where a single reckless decision, a moment of unbelievable carelessness, or a split second of poor judgment turned ordinary situations into fatal endings. These aren't just shocking accidents. They're reminders that sometimes the biggest danger isn't fate, it's human error at its absolute worst. It was June 26, 2023, in Biwabik, Minnesota. That afternoon, around 3:30 p.m., something felt off. A call came in to local authorities. A body had been found inside a house that no one had lived in for months. When officers arrived, they stepped into silence. No electricity, no running water. The air inside felt heavy, untouched, like the house itself had been holding its breath. It had been abandoned for a long time, and yet someone had been there. They made their way down into the basement. That's where they found him. 34-year-old Brandon Lee Bushman, trapped inside an old chest freezer. Brandon, known to friends as Skippy, wasn't exactly living a normal life. His past was complicated, filled with run-ins with the law going back years. Shoplifting, trespassing, substance possession, even operating a boat under the influence. And at the time of his death, there was an active warrant out for him. He was running from something, or maybe from everything. So he disappeared. He found refuge in this empty house in Babbitt, about 10 miles away. No power, no people, just isolation. A place where he thought he could stay hidden, safe. But isolation cuts both ways. People later told investigators they had seen him there not long before his body was discovered. One witness said they saw him suddenly running from upstairs, panicked, like he thought someone was coming for him. In a rush of panic, Brandon ran down into the basement and made a decision that would seal his fate. He climbed into an old chest freezer. Not the kind you're thinking of today. This was an outdated model. Heavy, thick, with a latch that locked from the outside. The kind that, once shut, doesn't open again from the inside. Maybe he thought it would only be for a few seconds. Just enough time to hide. Just until the danger passed. But then, the lid closed. And suddenly, everything changed. Inside that freezer, investigators later found a metal rod. A lawn ornament piece, jammed desperately between the lid and the seal. He had tried to force it open. He fought to get out, but it didn't budge. Now picture it. Pitch black. No air circulation, no sound, no way out, and no one coming. The house had no electricity, which meant the freezer wasn't even running. It hadn't worked in over a year. There was no hum, no vibration, just silence. Total, suffocating silence. No neighbors close enough to hear anything. No one checking on the property. No one who even knew he was there. The autopsy showed no signs of trauma. No evidence of a struggle with another person. No indication that anyone else was involved. This wasn't a crime in the way we usually think of one. It was something worse. It was a moment of fear that turned into a trap. Investigators still aren't completely sure when he climbed inside that freezer. It could have been weeks, maybe even months. The house had been empty since February, and there's no clear timeline of when he was last seen alive. A toxicology report was ordered, searching for any clues about his state of mind. But at the time, those answers hadn't come back yet. What we do know is this: the freezer itself was the kind that should have never been there. A design so dangerous it was pulled from the market decades ago. Because once it closed, it stayed closed, and Brandon didn't know that. Or maybe he did, but panic made him forget. Either way, that one decision cost him everything.
On the 14th of October 2004, a Bombardier CRJ-200 was on a repositioning flight from Little Rock Airport to Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. This was a repositioning flight, meaning that there weren't any passengers on board today's flight.
It was October 14th, 2004. A Bombardier CRJ-200 lifted off from Little Rock, Arkansas at 9:21 p.m., bound for Minneapolis-St. Paul. On board, there were only 2 people, 31-year-old Captain Jesse Rhodes and 23-year-old First Officer Peter Cesars. No cabin crew, no passengers, just 2 trained pilots and a perfectly functioning aircraft disappearing into the night sky. On paper, everything looked routine. The jet had no major issues. Both pilots were certified, experienced. Rhodes with nearly 7,000 flight hours. Cesar's with over 700. This was supposed to be simple, but almost immediately after takeoff, something shifted. Instead of a smooth climb, the aircraft began moving aggressively. The nose pitched up sharply, too sharply. Within seconds, the stall warning system screamed to life, warning them they were pushing the aircraft beyond safe limits. And yet, they kept going. Another high-force maneuver followed, then another. At 37,000 feet, most pilots would stabilize, settle into cruise, and let the autopilot do its job. But that's not what happened here. Instead, they requested something unusual, permission to climb even higher, to 41,000 feet. The absolute ceiling of that aircraft air traffic control approved it. And just like that, they were pushing the jet to its very edge. Over the radio, Captain Rhodes joked that they were having a little fun. Up there, above most commercial traffic, they reached what some pilots casually referred to as the 410 Club, a kind of unofficial milestone. They even cracked open sodas to celebrate. But at 41,000 feet, the margin for error disappears. The air is thinner. The engines struggle. The wings lose lift. Everything becomes less forgiving. The aircraft was now flying dangerously close to stall speed, the point where it can no longer stay in the air. The autopilot tried to compensate, tilting the nose upward to maintain altitude, but that only made things worse. Then, at 9:54 p.m., the stall warning returned. This time, it wasn't just a warning, it was a countdown. Safety systems activated, trying to push the nose down, to recover, to save the aircraft. But the pilots overrode them, not once, not twice, 3 times. Just a minute later, at 9:55 p.m., both engines failed. Inside the cockpit, one of them said the words no pilot ever wants to say. We don't have any engines. At 41,000 feet, they had options. Time, distance, nearly 100 miles of glide range. Airports within reach. But instead of immediately declaring an emergency, they hesitated. They tried to fix it themselves. They dove the aircraft attempting a windmill restart, using airflow to spin the engines back to life. But the speed they reached wasn't enough. The engines stayed silent. Still, no urgent call for help. They descended further down to 13,000 feet, trying again. This time, using the auxiliary power unit. 4 attempts, 4 failures. The engines wouldn't come back. Inside those engines, temperatures had soared to extreme levels. Metal components had warped, fused together. They were no longer machines that could be restarted. They were dead weight. Finally, 8 minutes after losing both engines, they contacted air traffic control. But even then, they didn't tell the full truth. They reported losing just 1 engine. By then, they had already fallen below 10,000 feet. Time was running out. At 10:09 p.m., they requested a diversion to Jefferson City Memorial Airport in Missouri. It was one of the last options within reach. Minutes later, they saw the runway. So close, but not close enough. We're not going to make it, Rhodes said. In those final moments, reality set in. Houses filled the ground below. Cesar's suggested keeping the landing gear up, anything to avoid tearing through buildings. And then, impact. The aircraft crashed into a residential area just short of the runway, flipping upside down and erupting into flames. Both pilots were killed instantly, and somehow, incredibly, no one on the ground was hurt. When investigators from the National Transportation Safety Board pieced everything together, the conclusion was chilling. There was nothing wrong with the plane when it took off. No hidden mechanical failure. No unavoidable catastrophe. What happened was human. The engines failed because they were pushed beyond their limits. The emergency procedures weren't followed. The warnings were ignored. And crucially, the situation wasn't communicated in time. This wasn't just an accident. It was a chain of decisions. Afterward, Pinnacle Airlines made sweeping changes, lowering altitude limits, updating training, making sure something like this could never happen again. Years later, the airline would rebrand as Endeavor Air.
Vamos a contar una historia muy triste. Es la historia de Sonia Pérez Jansón, 39 años. Es esta mujer que usted ve en pantalla, una mujer con un muy buen físico porque era muy deportista.
It was early 2014 in Santa Rosa, Argentina. At 39 years old, she was the kind of person people admired. She ran marathons, trained in boxing, and raised her 20-year-old son, Kevin. On the outside, everything about her life looked controlled, balanced, strong. But beneath that image, something was changing. People close to her began to notice it. Subtle at first, a growing fixation on her appearance, a need to improve, to perfect, to push beyond what was already enough. One friend later said she had become obsessed with how she looked, and that obsession had already hurt her once. The year before, Sonia suffered severe burns from excessive sun exposure. It was serious, painful enough that most people would have taken it as a warning, a moment to step back. But she didn't stop. Instead, she went further. Sometime in early 2014, quietly, without telling anyone, without consulting a doctor, Sonia made a decision that would seal her fate. She began injecting Vaseline into her own body, a substance meant for dry skin being pushed directly inside the body. No medical guidance, and she kept doing it. Days, maybe weeks, no one knew, until her body started to break. It began with breathing problems. Subtle at first, then worse. Something wasn't right. She was rushed to Lucio Molas Hospital in Santa Rosa, her condition already critical. Doctors examined her, confused. They saw injuries on her chest, but nothing that made sense. Her vital signs were unstable. Her body was clearly fighting something. But what? At first, Sonia said nothing. She denied doing anything unusual, but as her condition worsened, as the reality of what was happening set in, she finally told them. She had been injecting Vaseline. The room must have gone silent. Even experienced surgeons were stunned. One of them, a veteran in his field, later admitted he had never seen anything like it in his entire career. By the time she spoke the truth, it was already too late. Because once Vaseline enters the bloodstream, the body doesn't know how to handle it. It doesn't break it down, it doesn't fight it like an infection, it just reacts. In Sonia's case, that reaction turned deadly. A blood clot formed and then traveled straight to her lungs. Doctors tried everything. She remained in the hospital for a month, fighting, holding on, but the damage was irreversible. The clot couldn't be removed. And on March the 6th, 2014, Sonia Perez Lanzon died, just like that. A woman who had spent her life pushing her body to be stronger, lost to something she believed would make her better. When the news spread, people were stunned. Her son Kevin shared a message just days later. You can almost feel the weight in his words, the disbelief, the grief, the love. 20 years with his mother, reduced to memories in an instant. And that's the part that stays with you, because no one really knows when she started, or if she ever told anyone. All we know is that she made a choice, one she believed would help her, improve her, maybe even make her happier. But instead, it took everything.
A British woman has died during a bungee jump from this bridge in Spain. It happened near the town of Lanjarón in Granada. The 8-year-old is thought to have hit a parapet during the descent.
It was August 2015 in Cantabria, northern Spain, a place known for its breathtaking mountains and sweeping views. For 17-year-old Vera Mall, it was supposed to be an unforgettable adventure. She had traveled from the Netherlands, full of excitement, ready to try something daring for the first time, bungee jumping. But sometimes, all it takes is one small mistake. That day, Vera stood on a bridge high above a highway in a quiet town. Below her, cars moved like distant shadows. Around her, staff from a company called FlowTrack prepared for another routine jump. They had done this many times before. At least, that's what it looked like. What Vera didn't know, what no one told her, was that this location wasn't even approved for bungee jumping under Spanish law. It wasn't officially safe. It wasn't authorized. And yet, they were using it anyway. She was fitted with a harness. A rope was attached to her body. But here's the part that changes everything. That rope wasn't attached to the bridge, not yet. If she stepped off at that exact moment, there would be nothing holding her. Nothing to slow her fall, nothing to save her. And still, she stood there, trusting the people around her, trusting that everything was ready. Nearby, the instructor, responsible for her safety, for the final signal, watched. This was the moment that mattered most. The moment where clarity is everything. But there was a problem. He didn't speak English well. In court, his level of English was described as macaronic. Vera moved closer to the edge, heart racing, waiting for the signal, and then he spoke. No jump, but that's not what she heard. In her mind, it sounded like, now jump. One word, one moment, one misunderstanding, and she stepped forward. The silence after must have been unbearable. When investigators later pieced everything together, the truth was even more disturbing. This wasn't just a tragic accident, it was a chain of failures, each one small on its own, but together, catastrophic. The instructor hadn't used the correct phrase. Safety guidelines recommend clear, unmistakable commands like, don't jump, words that can't be confused. But he didn't say that. No one checked her age. In Spain, you have to be 18 to bungee jump. Vera was only 17. No one verified it. The company didn't even have permission to operate from that bridge. It wasn't approved. It wasn't regulated. And still, they continued. Even the waiting area was unsafe. People standing dangerously close to the edge. No barriers. No clear markings. And at the center of it all, a single moment where everything depended on clear communication, and failed. In court, the responsibility became undeniable. The instructor was in charge. It was his job to make sure she understood, to make sure she was safe, to make sure she didn't jump until everything was secured. He failed. The court called it what it was, gross negligence. Both the instructor and another staff member were found guilty and sentenced to prison. The judge made it clear this wasn't Vera's fault. She trusted the system. She trusted the people who were supposed to protect her. It was March the 29th, 1987, deep in northern Australia. For 24-year-old Ginger Faye Meadows, it felt like the adventure of a lifetime. A model from Colorado, she had fallen in love with the idea of the Australian wilderness after watching Crocodile Dundee. And now, she was living it. She was traveling aboard a yacht called the Lady G, moving through some of the most remote and untouched parts of the country. The plan sounded almost dreamlike. Sail from Broome to Darwin, then continue on to Papua New Guinea. It was freedom, exploration, the kind of journey most people only imagine. But Australia's wild doesn't care about dreams. That day, the yacht anchored near King's Cascade Waterfall in the rugged Kimberley region. It was stunning. Towering cliffs, cascading water, untouched wilderness stretching in every direction. But beneath that beauty was something else, something ancient. The Prince Regent River, a place known for one thing, saltwater crocodiles. These aren't ordinary animals. They can grow up to 6 meters long. Before anyone left the yacht, Captain Bruce Fitzpatrick made it clear. Do not go in the water, not even for a second, not even to dip your feet, because out here the water doesn't belong to you. But warnings don't always feel real until it's too late. Ginger and her friend Jane Burchett, the yacht's chef, stepped into the water anyway. It was shallow, waist deep, calm, harmless, at least on the surface. They laughed, splashing near the base of the waterfall, while the rest of the crew climbed higher onto the rocks for a better view. From above, everything looked peaceful, until it didn't. Fitzpatrick spotted it first. A shape in the water, moving, fast. A crocodile, massive, around 4 meters long, cutting straight toward them. He shouted, screamed for them to get out. But distance and time were no longer on their side. Realizing they couldn't make it back to the boat, Ginger and Jane scrambled onto a small rock ledge beneath the waterfall, pressing their backs against the stone. The water churned below them, and just a few meters away, the crocodile stopped, floating, watching, eyes locked on them. Jane would later describe the moment, the way it came closer, its jaws opening slightly as if testing the distance. Acting on instinct, she threw her shoe at it. It struck the animal's head. For a second, it worked. The crocodile slipped beneath the surface, gone. And in that brief, fragile moment of silence, everything felt like it might be okay. Thinking it was over, Ginger made a decision. She let go of the ledge and jumped back into the water, trying to swim away. 2 strokes, that's all she managed. From below, the crocodile exploded upward, faster than the eye could follow, grabbing her and dragging her under. Jane could only watch. Seconds later, the crocodile surfaced again, its grip unmistakable. Ginger's arms were raised. her face filled with pure terror. And then she was pulled under once more, this time for good. The river went still again, like nothing had ever happened. The next day, her body was found tangled in mangroves along the riverbank. It would have been her 25th birthday. Even then, it wasn't over. As rescuers transported her remains by boat, another crocodile lunged from the water, attacking the body bag itself. The crew had to stop, waiting for a larger vessel, knowing they weren't safe even then. That's the reality of that place. Out there, you are never not being watched. The story spread quickly, shocking people across the world. A young traveler, chasing adventure, taken in seconds by something she couldn't see. Authorities later confirmed there were no warning signs posted at King's Cascade. The area was too remote, the conditions too unpredictable, but the captain had warned her.